Have you ever thought about the age of discovery as a natural outgrowth of Europe's wealth, power, and technological achievements? Let's challenge that notion. The age of discovery, a term often used to describe the period from the 15th to the 17th century, when Europeans explored the world's oceans, is commonly associated with Europe's wealth, power, and technological prowess. But let's take a closer look. At the dawn of the 16th century, Europe was a patchwork of warring and fractious nations. Far from being the dominant and innovative force we often imagine, Europe was arguably less powerful and innovative than other regions of the world. We need to question the narrative that Europe was the singularly powerful entity in the global landscape. Consider this: Europe produced little of value to potential trading partners. The continent was not the hub of innovation or production it is often portrayed to be. So where did the resources for these voyages of discovery come from? The answer lies in Africa. Europe's royals earned significant profits from African gold. This gold provided a gigantic boost to the Portuguese crown, enabling Lisbon to keep pace with Spain in their headlong course into ocean faring, discovery, conquest, crusading, and intercontinental trade. Thus, the Age of Discovery was not just a product of Europe's wealth and power, but was significantly influenced by the resources that were available to them, specifically African gold. So, it appears that the Age of Discovery wasn't solely a result of Europe's prowess, but rather due to the resources available to them, namely African gold. What comes to mind when you think of pre-colonial Africa? Is it a stateless and primitive land? Let's dispel that myth. Africa, before the arrival of Europeans, was anything but primitive. It was a continent alive with innovation, art, commerce, and power. African kingdoms had established sophisticated city-states that rivaled Europe's in terms of political organization and military might. Take, for instance, the Kingdom of Mali, which was a hub of commerce, art, and exploration. This wasn't a loosely organized kingdom, but a structured empire with a flourishing economy and a formidable military. It was a beacon of learning, home to the world-renowned University of Sankore in Timbuktu, which attracted scholars from far and wide. But the Kingdom of Mali wasn't just known for its intellectual prowess. It was also incredibly wealthy, particularly under the reign of Emperor Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa is often considered the richest person in history, amassing a fortune so vast that it's almost impossible to fully comprehend. During his reign, Mansa Musa embarked on a pilgrimage to Mecca. Accompanied by a 60,000-person entourage, he carried with him as much as 18 tons of pure gold to use in trade and as gifts. This demonstration of wealth was so extravagant that it caused a significant disruption in the economies of the regions he passed through. News of Mansa Musa's wealth eventually reached European capitals. Reports of the African continent, rich in gold and resources, sparked a new interest among Europeans, and they began to set their sights on Africa. Africa was far from primitive before the Europeans arrived. It was a continent full of wealth, innovation, and power. Far from being a stateless and primitive land, Africa was a beacon of civilization, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience, a land of vast resources and wealth that would eventually become a target for European exploration and exploitation. Ever wondered what triggered Europeans' pursuit of Africa's riches? The answer lies in the tales of a certain African emperor's wealth. Let's step back in time to the 14th century. The Malian emperor Mansa Musa, a name that might not be as familiar as Columbus or Magellan, undertook a journey that would leave a profound mark on history. Musa, the wealthiest person in history, led an entourage of 60,000 people across the African continent in 1342, carrying with them an astonishing 18 tons of pure gold for trade and as gifts. Imagine the spectacle it must have been. News of such vast wealth did not stay confined within Africa's borders. Reports of Mansa Musa's gold-laden journey slowly trickled into the ears of European royalty. The tales of gold, wealth, and prosperity sparked a glimmer of greed in the eyes of the European monarchs. They began to wonder, what if they could get their hands on Africa's riches? This curiosity was not driven by a desire for knowledge or exploration alone. It was the allure of gold, the promise of wealth beyond imagination, that stirred their interest. The tales of Mansa Musa's wealth served as the trigger for the European pursuit of Africa. The warring and fractious nations of Europe saw in Africa a chance to bolster their coffers. They saw an opportunity to finance their voyages of discovery, their conquests, their crusades. The gold that Africa offered could make them powerful beyond measure. It could help them keep pace with their rivals, to outvote them, to become the wealthiest and most powerful nations on earth. So, it wasn't just the spirit of adventure or the desire for new territories that led the Europeans towards Africa. It was the wealth, the gold, the promise of riches that lured them. The tales of Mansa Musa's gold were the trigger, the spark that ignited the European pursuit of Africa's riches. So, it wasn't just curiosity that propelled Europeans towards Africa, but the lure of its immense wealth. How significant was the contribution of enslaved Africans to the rise of the West? Far more than you might have believed. Let's delve into the heart of this matter. For centuries, the narrative has often marginalized the role of enslaved Africans in the rise of the West. However, a closer examination reveals a starkly different reality. The labor of enslaved Africans was not just a side note in the grand scheme of things, but rather, it was the linchpin that held together the economic machinery of the burgeoning Western world. Consider this for a moment. The value derived from the trade and ownership of slaves in America alone surpassed that of all the country's factories, railroads, and canals combined. Yes, you heard that right. The labor of enslaved Africans was the backbone of a thriving American economy, generating wealth that far outweighed the total value of its industrial sector. Now you might be wondering, how is that even possible? Well, the answer lies in the brutal efficiency of the plantation system. Enslaved Africans were forced to work in inhumane conditions, cultivating cash crops like tobacco, cotton, and sugar. These crops were then exported to Europe, earning immense profits for their owners and fueling the economic growth of the West. But the impact of enslaved Africans extended far beyond the plantation fields. Their labor also played a pivotal role in the development of infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, and buildings, which were essential for the West's growth and expansion. And let's not forget the role of enslaved Africans in the Caribbean. The slave plantation agriculture of the Caribbean, which also heavily relied on the forced labor of Africans, was another key driver of Western wealth. So the next time you look at the grandeur and wealth of the West, remember this: without Africa and the labor of enslaved Africans, the West wouldn't have experienced such an explosion of wealth, nor such early or rapid industrialization. And that, dear listeners, is a testament to the indelible, albeit often overlooked, contribution of enslaved Africans to the rise of the West. So, what can we gather from all this information about the Age of Discovery and Europe's relationship with Africa? Well, it's clear. The narrative of Europe's discovery voyages being solely a product of its wealth, power, and innovation is not entirely accurate. The truth is, these voyages wouldn't have been possible without the profits from African gold. This wealth provided a significant boost to the Portuguese crown, enabling Lisbon to keep pace with Spain in their headlong course into ocean faring, discovery, conquest, and intercontinental trade. We've also debunked the myth of Africa being stateless and primitive before the Europeans arrived. The reality tells us a different story. African kingdoms had established city-states that rivaled Europe's in terms of political organization, military power, commerce, art, and exploration. Take the kingdom in present-day Mali, for instance, which held more wealth than any royal family in Europe. The staggering wealth of the Malian emperor Mansa Musa and his 60,000-person entourage, who crossed the African continent in 1342 with up to 18 tons of pure gold, is a testament to this. Reports of Musa's wealth eventually reached European capitals, triggering Europeans' pursuit of Africa's riches. Lastly, we've re-evaluated the contribution of enslaved Africans to the rise of the West. The idea that their labor made only a marginal contribution has been refuted. In fact, the value derived from the trade and ownership of slaves in America alone was greater than that of all the country's factories, railroads, and canals combined. Without Africa and the slave plantation agriculture of the Caribbean that derived from it, the West wouldn't have experienced such an explosion of wealth or such early and rapid industrialization. The Age of Discovery is a complex era, and our understanding of it must acknowledge the significant influence and contribution of Africa. History is not just about understanding the past, but also about learning from it. The wealth of Africa was not just in its resources, but in its people and their innovations. The kingdoms we've discussed were rich because they harnessed the skills, creativity, and resources of their people. They weren't ever waiting for a foreign power to come and discover them. They were busy creating their own fortunes. We can apply this lesson today. Many of us are waiting for the right opportunity to come along, but the truth is, we can create our own opportunities. We have more resources at our disposal than any generation before us. We have the internet, a tool that allows us to learn almost anything, connect with people all around the world, and even start our own businesses. So instead of waiting for someone to hand us our fortune, let's take personal responsibility for creating it. Let's learn from history and focus on creating wealth. Now, it's not about the gold or the diamonds, but about the value we can create with our own hands and minds. We hope this video has opened your eyes to a more nuanced understanding of history. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Let's continue to learn and grow together.